Which is a federal program, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that wasn't brought up the first time that we brought this before the council at the last meeting because we didn't know that it was going to be an issue. But as you can see, the area highlighted just down below there indicates that the amount of uncommitted funds as of July 31st must be less than $404,092. And if the Rosenbusch and Cunningham construction contracts, and I know you're only asking about the Cunningham project at this time, are not approved by July 31st, HUD will recapture home funds in the amount of $228,655.
Okay. And that's really, I mean, I wanted to give people at home some kind of a background of what we're doing here and why. I mean, I know myself, I've questioned other council members, Mr. Stevens, Ms. Comartin, I believe, in the past as far as, is this a proper use of the funds, and the fact that we spend so much out rehabbing the houses, and then by the time we go to sell them, we don't usually, come anywhere near recouping that. But on the same token, I mean, this is a tool to help us invest or reinvest in some of these homes that otherwise would sit as vacant lots. So, I mean, it's kind of, a back and forth as far as, what do you do and what's the best way to make use of this? Because although I think, I guess I'd rather use the funds to invest in our community than turn them back over into the federal. I mean, I realize it's still taxpayer money, but even, the city of Warren can opt not to use it, and then another community will be awarded it another time for them to clean up their community. So,
it's very likely because they do distribute the community development block grant funds that are not used by communities as a whole out to communities that have utilized their funds to date, and if you don't use them, you will lose them, as they say.
Right. All right, well, I appreciate you being here, and I just wanted a little bit of clarification. Ms. Comartin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
The reason why I really had an issue with this the last time was basically with Cunningham. I had sold a house on Cunningham. It appraised for $50,000. My huge, with the insight on this and looking at even a Washington property, very similar to what you're constructing here, a same size lot, everything, that would only be like $97,000. So 97 there, 50 in our city for a ranch house on the same size lot that I just closed. Same identical street. I know it's a huge loss. I know that we have the money already allocated for the purpose of it, and I don't want to put us in a position where we give back the money, but I do have a huge issue of a value in the dollar number that we invest in the property. The $150,000, not even recouping, nowhere near the value or the investment that we're making. I'd rather see the money go to homeowners who need improvements, the NSP money. We had a waiting list, and help out all those people who could truly need the improvements on their home for safety issues. So my vote will be reflected in that with this one.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bacamino?
I yield to Mr. Green. Go ahead.
Mr. Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bacamino. Ms. Burgess, the funds that we're using to demolish and construct this is home investment partnership funds?
Yes.
And those funds can be used for that purpose and that purpose solely, or are there any other purposes that those funds can be used for? So I know we have different funds for different purposes. We're limited, so
right.
Please define that for me.
If you recall the meeting of the whole that the Community Development Department had with the Council earlier this year, and where we discussed the 5-year plan, and we talked about all of the different pools of funds that we receive. There are other limited uses for the funds, but we've already allocated those for those purposes. So the funds that we're talking about for these projects are limited for this use.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
We've looked at this before. We've talked about this in the past. these are federal dollars that are coming back to us. These are not designed for a money-making venture. They're not designed for a revenue-neutral venture. They're designed for investing in neighborhoods where houses are, well, this one in case, they did a fire training there, and now we're going to put up a new house there. The other side of the coin, if we don't do anything with it, we have a house that we have to pay them to tear down, and then we'll have a vacant lot that we're going to have to cut every year. So we can either use the federal funds to invest in the neighborhood, and we're not going to break even on the price. We're going to sell it for what we can sell it for and get a taxpayer in there. The other side of it, as I said, we can do nothing, and we'll have another empty lot in the south end, which I don't want. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Barcamino.
Thank you. Ms. Borges, on this particular property, though, hasn't the demolition already occurred? Or is it?
Yes.
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 Because I was out there today, and I'm talking to the surrounding neighbors on both sides and across the street. John had a pool there swimming, and he was telling me that they approve, they want this. They don't want it to be an empty lot, and they certainly don't want the previous renters to come in. They want a homeowner, and this particular federal fund is designed to put people in a home. Of course, the cost for a house is going to be the same, for the materials and the labor. It's, like realtors say, location, location, location. And the neighbors there, their houses, first of all, were beautifully kept. Flowers, beds were immaculate, and they're just happy, excited about getting a new home and their new family, taxpayers, Mr. Green said. So if we don't do this, we lose $153,000 to put that home. And I know the homes there are selling for about $50,000, but we are, and people, for many years, Michigan had the luxury of paying more federal tax dollars than we ever got back. That's because the economy was good, the auto industry was booming. Now we need the help from the federal government. That's our money, as some of the audience said. That's our money. Yeah. And it's time to get it back, put it in this neighborhood, particularly this Cunningham. The 3 neighbors that I talked to are thrilled about it. And it is designed to keep neighborhoods to have homeowners. And one of the concerns I've had by knocking doors is that people, renters. Well, this is an opportunity to use that federal money to for one home on one street to have a homeowner which will pay taxes. So I'll be voting for this. Thank you.
Any other comments from council members?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Stevens.
As it was pointed out, I've had the hardest time getting my arms around this whole process here. What was the purchase price on this property? I left that additional backup. What was the purchase price on this home?
It was,
I think it was like 11,000 something.
I believe it was 12,000.
12,000.
Councilman.
And then we're going to spend 153,000 to tear down and build up a new home. And what is the expected sale price of the home? And this is the hard part. This is where I can't get my arms around it.
Well, it's difficult to estimate,
But for that area, that square footage,
we're probably talking, no more than 50,000.
right?
Yeah.
So
And that's based on right now, today's economy.
right, and that's where I have the hard time getting my arms around it. But as Mr. Green pointed out, if we don't utilize these funds, we end up with a vacant lot that we have to maintain. We don't have somebody on the tax rolls and stuff. And so long term, it is best for the city to do this, because if we don't utilize this money and they take it back from us, guess what? It's going to some other city down the road that is going to do the same thing with it that we wouldn't be willing to do. So for that reason, I will be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Any further comments? Go ahead and call the question. Mr. Barcamino.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Liss.
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Ms. Vogt.
Yes.
Mr. Warner.
Yes.
Ms. Comartin.
No.
Camp, yes. The motion passed 8-1.
Item 11C, this item died for lack of support, 6/14/2011. Consideration and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute contract for 25756 Rosenbush, home demolition and new construction project with American Style Homes LLC in the total amount of $125,800, ITB-W-8228.
Need a motion and support?
Motion to approve for the same
Support.
reasons.
Motion by Mr. Green, support by Mr. Stevens. Any discussion?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Comartin?
Good evening. I have a question for you. On this particular one, we had the demo and the construction combined together. Acquisition cost, we have separated at $25,000. Do we know how much out of that is going to be the demo with us? And did the community economic department look at maybe even using some of our demolition companies that we've been working with on a regular basis to see if there was any savings in that?
No, I had the bid documents.
Yeah, it doesn't have it separated, so I was
I
just
see
curious, out of that 125.8, how much of that was for the demolition? Just to see how, if it's in line with what we've been paying for demolitions.
I'm sorry, I don't have the breakout with me of the bidding documents, so I can't answer that question.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further comments from council members? Go ahead and call the question. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Boat?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. List?
Yes.
Ms. Comartin?
Yes.
Mr. Barcamino?
Yes.
Camp, yes. The motion passed unanimously.
Item 11D, this item was removed on 5/24/2011. Tabulation of bids and recommendation in Ray furnishing one roll-off truck with hoist for the sanitation division and consideration and adoption of a resolution accepting the lowest bid submitted by Wiegand Max Sales and Service Incorporated in the amount of $157,061, ITB-W-8373.
Need a motion and support for item 11D.
Motion to approve with discussion?
Motion by Mr. Sadowski.
Support.
Support by Mr. Stevens. Discussion, Mr. Sadowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ganem, I spent quite a bit of time with the gentleman down in the recycling center. I figured he was probably, I don't want to say the best person to speak to, but he's the one who operates the current roll-off. And, you know, he gave me quite a bit of information regarding the roll-off. For people who don't know, when we talk about a roll-off truck, this is the way we transport 30 and 40-yard dumpsters to Great Lakes. We take our composting material, everything that you see at the recycling center. This is the vehicle that they utilize in order to transport back and forth. The current vehicle that we have, I know, is in pretty rough shape, and actually from our auto subcommittee found out it was in a little bit rougher shape than I believed it was. This is really the heart and soul of the recycling center, and without this vehicle, it will basically shut the facility down because we have no way of transporting that aside from dragging it behind a larger truck, and I don't think that they're going to allow us to do that. So, Mr. Ganem, in our subcommittee,